They labeled it a toxic substance. The human called it a drink. The Galactic Confederation's research vessel. Contemplation drifted in the silent void near the fringes of the Orion Arm. Its mission was purely scientific, to catalog, analyze, and classify. For the last 3 standard cycles, its crew of 7 distinct species had been surveying a particularly unremarkable star system, the 3rd planet of which teemed with a loud, short-lived species that called itself human. Senior xenobiologist Dr. Vrilk of the Xylos Federation peered through the multispectral observation array at the blue and green orb below. He found the humans fascinating in a repulsive sort of way. They were soft, constantly leaking fluids from various orifices, and seemed driven by an irrational emotional chaos that his own logical, crystalline mind found deeply unsettling. His current task, however, was purely chemical. The Contemplation's atmospheric scoops had been trawling the planet's upper atmosphere for trace elements, and the automated analysis had flagged a compound of particular interest. A sample, no larger than a single drop of water, had been collected and was now sealed within a sterile examination chamber. Vrilk's primary manipulator, a delicate cluster of crystalline feelers, hovered over the console. The data scrolled before him, translated into the Universal Scientific Standard. Compound identified. Ethanol. Base molecular structure C2H60. Presence confirmed in atmospheric trace elements originating from numerous planetary surface sources. He began the deeper scan, running the compound through the Confederation's massive, unshared database of known substances. The results were immediate and unambiguous. A series of red alerts pulsed across his screen, each one more severe than the last. Classification: toxic substance. Category Omega-9. Warning: neurotoxin. Warning: cytotoxin. Effects on standard biologies: xylose, crystalline. Causes rapid fracturing of the crystalline lattice upon contact. Fatal. Troikin, amphibious. Disrupts cellular osmotic balance, leading to systemic failure. Fatal. Valari, avian. Instantly denatures respiratory proteins. Fatal. Cathar, silicon-based. Acts as a powerful solvent. Fatal. General consensus: for 98.7% of all known carbon and non-carbon-based life, this compound is a potent, fast-acting poison. Even trace amounts in a shared atmosphere can cause severe neurological impairment, organ damage, and death. A prolonged exposure is universally lethal. Recommend immediate, contained sterilization of sample. Vrilk retracted his feelers as if the sample itself might reach through the containment field. Omega-9 was the highest threat level for a naturally occurring compound. This was the kind of substance that could depopulate a space station if a container breached. And yet, the atmospheric analysis showed this poison was pervasive. It was in the very air of the human homeworld, emanating from their population centers in vast quantities. He quickly compiled his report and sent it to the ship's commander, a seasoned Troikan admiral named Glithan. The response was immediate. Admiral Glithan, with his wide-set eyes and moist, mottled skin, arrived in the lab within moments, his gill slits fluttering with agitation. "So, xenobiologist Vrilk," the admiral croaked, his voice a low rumble. "Your report? Is this accurate? This poison is ambient on their world?" "It is, Admiral," Vrilk confirmed, pulling up the atmospheric dispersion patterns. "See here. The highest concentrations are around their major population hubs. They call them cities. They are not just exposed. They are actively generating and releasing this toxin into their own biosphere." Admiral Glithan stared at the data, his amphibian eyes wide with a mixture of horror and scientific awe. A species that swims in its own poison. It is no wonder they are so volatile. How have they not succumbed? Their biology must be unimaginably resilient or tragically short-lived. "That is the other anomaly, Admiral," Vrilk said, his voice dropping to a whisper of crystal friction. I have also been running a parallel analysis on human biological samples obtained from long-range tissue scans. Admiral, they don't just tolerate this compound, their bodies are specifically designed to process it. He displayed a new set of data. The human liver, a large, multi-lobed organ, produces a specific enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase. This enzyme's sole purpose is to break down ethanol into less harmful components, primarily acetaldehyde, which is then further broken down by another enzyme, aldehyde dehydrogenase, into acetate, a simple molecule their bodies can use for energy. Admiral, they have evolved a dedicated, multi-stage metabolic pathway specifically to neutralize this omega-9 neurotoxin. The two scientists stared at each other, a profound and terrifying realization dawning on them. The humans hadn't just accidentally survived their toxic environment. They had adapted to it. They had mastered it. They had woven the neutralization of a deadly poison into the very fabric of their biology. "But why?" the Admiral whispered, the concept straining his logical faculties. Why would any species evolve such a thing? The metabolic cost must be immense. Vrilk scrolled through more data, pulling up cultural and historical files gleaned from intercepted transmissions. "I believe I have found the answer, Admiral. They don't just tolerate it. They seek it out. They create it. Look." He projected a series of images onto the lab's viewer. Images of humans gathered in large groups, holding containers filled with clear brown and amber liquids. Images of vast facilities dedicated to its production. And ancient pictograms showing the fermentation of grains and fruits, religious texts mentioning it, celebrations centered around its consumption. "They produce it intentionally," Vrilk said, his voice filled with awe. "They have a name for it. They call it alcohol. And they don't treat it as a poison. They treat it as a beverage, a drink." Admiral Glithen slumped against a console, his amphibian mind reeling. "They drink omega-9 for pleasure. They evolved a defense mechanism so effective that they can consume a potent neurotoxin as a recreational beverage." The implications were staggering. They had been observing humanity through a standard galactic lens, judging them by their technological level, their political squabbles, their short lifespans. They had completely missed the most fundamental, terrifying truth about them. The humans were poison eaters. And if they could do this to themselves, willingly and with joy, what could they do to a species that tried to threaten them? Part 2. The news of the human poison spread through the contemplation like a contagion. The initial horror among the crew gradually morphed into a complex blend of terror and a strange, morbid fascination. The Valari navigator, a being of feather and air, refused to enter the lab where the sample was stored. The Cathar engineer, whose silicon flesh could be dissolved by the stuff, ran diagnostic after diagnostic on the ship's atmospheric processors, terrified of a leak. Admiral Glithen found himself in an unprecedented predicament. His mission was one of peaceful, if detached, observation. First contact protocols were clear: observe, analyze, and only intervene if the species posed a direct threat to galactic stability. But this discovery, this changed everything. How do you classify a species that has turned a universal poison into a cornerstone of its culture? He convened a meeting of his senior staff. Vrilk was there, along with the Valari navigator, a Cathar engineer whose rocky hide seemed to shimmer with anxiety, and the ship's communication officer, a being of pure energy called a Lumina. "The question before us is no longer simply scientific," Admiral Glithen began, his voice grave. "It is strategic. The humans are not just resilient. They are fundamentally alien to every norm we understand. We must determine if they represent a threat." "Threat?" the Valari chirped, its feathers ruffled. "Admiral, they drink poison. Of course they are a threat." Define threat, the Lumina pulsed, its words appearing as patterns of light. Is their aggression directed outward, or is it a byproduct of their own internal biology? Vrilk interjected. That is a key point. My research suggests that this alcohol is often consumed in social settings. It appears to lower their inhibitions, making them more volatile, certainly, but also more social and trusting within their own groups. It is a paradox, a poison that builds community. The Cathar rumbled, its voice like grinding stones. Community or not, if one of them spills a drink on me, I am a pile of gravel. Their very presence is a bioweapon. The debate raged, circling the same points. Were the humans dangerous because of their poison? Or was their mastery over it a sign of incredible physiological fortitude that should be respected? No conclusion was reached. The fear was too new, too profound. It was decided that further, more covert observation was necessary. They would focus on the cultural context of alcohol consumption. Vrilk dedicated his every waking cycle to it. He watched human dramas where characters drowned their sorrows in the substance. He saw sporting events where victory was celebrated by spraying it around. He analyzed their literature, finding poems written to it, songs sung about it, and countless jokes centered on its effects. He saw a human consume a quantity of pure ethanol that, based on his models, should have been instantly fatal to a xylos. The human's movements became clumsy, their speech slurred, and their judgment impaired. They were, by any standard, poisoned. But then, after a few hours of unconsciousness, they woke up. They were groggy, claimed to have a headache, and then, in some cases, drank more of the poison to cure it. The hair of the dog, they called it. The sheer illogical absurdity of it was staggering. Then the contemplation detected an anomaly. A small private human spacecraft, little more than a tin can with engines, was on a collision course with a designated shipping lane. It was unregistered. Its communications were dark, and its trajectory was erratic. Standard procedure was to ignore it, let it pass, or burn up, but this one was tumbling directly towards a busy corridor. Admiral Glithin faced a choice: interfere and risk exposure, or do nothing and allow a potential collision that would certainly expose them and cause significant loss of life. He chose to interfere. A carefully aimed, low-power tractor beam locked onto the tiny craft, gently nudging it off its collision course and into a stable orbit near the contemplation. For a moment, there was silence on the bridge. Then, a burst of static erupted from the communication console. The lumina flared brightly. "Admiral, I am receiving a transmission from the craft. It's audio only," a voice crackled through the speakers. It was a human voice, slurred, loud, and laced with panic. "Whoa! Hey! Hello? My ship's gone all wibbly. Who's out there? Come on, show yourselves. I'm not that drunk." "Okay, maybe I'm a little drunk. But that was one awesome party. Did you guys see that asteroid? I totally almost hit it. My name's Dave, by the way. Dave from Earth. You guys got any more of that? Whatever you just hit me with? Felt like a giant hand. A very polite giant hand. Thanks for that, by the way. Saved my... well, everything." The bridge was frozen in absolute crystalline silence. The most terrifyingly potent biological weapon they had ever encountered was now talking to them. He was intoxicated, he was cheerful, and he was thanking them. Vrilk's crystalline feelers trembled. "Admiral, he is under the influence of the toxin. He is cognitively impaired, but he is also friendly." "Dave from Earth," the Admiral muttered, the name feeling strange on his tongue. "He's friendly." The Cathar engineer backed away from the console. "Get him away from me." The lumina pulsed. His emotional state is one of gratitude and curiosity. The threat assessment is low. Admiral Glithin stared at the image of the tiny, erratic ship on his screen. Inside was a creature who had just consumed enough poison to kill half his crew, had nearly killed himself through pilot error, and was now expressing sincere thanks to the unknown beings who had saved him. There was no logic to it. There was no precedent for it. It was pure, chaotic, human. He thought of the poems, the songs, the celebrations. He thought of the biological pathway, a testament to eons of exposure. They didn't just survive the poison. They embraced it. They laughed with it. They cried with it. They made friends with it. He turned to his crew. "Open a channel," he said, his voice filled with a newfound respect for the beautiful, a terrifying madness of it all. "Dave from Earth," he said into the void. "This is Admiral Glithin of the Galactic Confederation Vessel Contemplation. You are very welcome, and we have a great many questions about your drink."